You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Happy Wednesday. This is a podcast set to inspire unconventional careers, and it's a part of OMD Ventures, my platform on a mission to create utopian organizations. As always, subscribe to the podcast, give it a 5-star rating if you love it. If you don't, just leave it alone. Don't listen to it. And to stay in the loop, subscribe to the newsletter where I share all my weekly learnings, essay, podcast, as well as the exclusive recap of the week on what my journey has been like through this, odyssey of life, I guess. You can find all the related stuff at omdventures.com. And today's interview is another different kind of interview format that I'm experimenting with. It is a Q&A style, not about me, but about a past guest. I bring on a past guest from episode 60, the anonymous podcast from transitioning from a business field to UX design. And I had one of you, my listeners, actually write in a list of very detailed and awesome questions that you'd like this particular guest to answer. So that's what we do today. We answer various questions on whether having a bootcamp credential adds any value to if your portfolio is already good, difference between college programs to bootcamps to just doing it yourself, the DIY way, and what skills to prioritize to set yourself apart from the hiring pool, why there might be more senior design positions out there than junior ones, whether the guest would want to do a bootcamp again if the person were to go back in time, knowing what they know, and learnings to make the process ever so smoother given all the hindsight bias that one gets from living life. And so that's what we talk about today. And for you other listeners out there, now you might be more incentivized to reach in, ask questions, and who knows, maybe we'll get to form more of these kinds of episodes to try out. And so I hope you enjoy my conversation today with the anonymous guest who's a UX designer. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. So today we have a return guest. I'm not going to say the guest's name because it's a return guest from the Anonymous series. As some of you may know, I've had a guest on for the Anonymous series for the transition from accounting to UX design. And I actually had one of you, my listeners, I'll call you AC for your initials, just to kind of give you some privacy. But you did an awesome job writing in and giving a lot of encouragement, and the podcast seems to have helped you a lot in giving you perspective, and you also had a lot of follow-up questions for the guest, and I thought that might be a pretty cool way to engage more with you, my listeners, and get you, AC particularly, the value you might get further by having this particular guest back on to answer your questions. So as always, with my typical anonymous podcast interviews, I will refer to the guest by this gender-neutral Korean name of Min. So hey Min, thanks for coming back on the podcast. I appreciate you making the time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I was kind of hesitant at first to continuously have guests from the past on to answer additional questions, but I thought this might be a pretty cool chance for people, especially in this kind of transition point, I guess, where you're going from business to the realm of UX design. I've had multiple people, I think even around me, to be very, I think, showing enough interest to say curious about the transition. So I think it might help with other people, not just AC as well.
Yeah, there's been a recent, influx of people trying to actually transition into UX. I've had other friends who have also reached out to me, who know other people or want to connect me to other people.
Okay, so I guess you're in a high demand situation yourself, eh?
Yeah.
People want to know about your experience a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a new upcoming field that I think a lot of people are trying to get into, and there's a lot more jobs around too as well. So
and for you new listeners, the episode is episode 60. If you want to listen to the first discussion part where we actually talk about the journey from transitioning from a Big Four accounting slash tax manager role into a field in UX design. And so I'm just gonna go through the questions that AC sent over. They're quite detailed, and so that really helps a lot. The first question is, how much additional leverage would a certificate from a boot camp give a candidate compared to someone with a good portfolio without that credential? And parentheses, in the perspective of a typical startup employer. She's asking because she's wondering whether she should accept a diploma program at a college, which is 18 months long and $20,000, or go to a boot camp, or attempt to learn it all by herself through online courses. She believes she's a disciplined and self-motivated person, and this would be a viable but might take longer option, and she wouldn't really have any tangible credentials if she learned by herself.
This is a very good question because it's also something I struggled with figuring out when I was going through this transition. I was wondering if I should learn it myself, go through a boot camp. That was a short, like 3 month stint. And within boot camps, you can do the part time or the full time as well. And then also going to a college. And that was significantly more time, like she mentioned, around 18 months, and also cost a lot more. Um, and honestly, I don't think there's one straight answer to it. Um, I've spoken to a lot of people who are in the market in this field, and there seems to be um, differing perspectives on this. Um, if you have a solid portfolio, and it has to be a very solid portfolio.
That's a big asterisk
Yeah,
there. That has to be really solid.
yeah,
But so when you say solid though, is there? How do you know though? How do you know if it's solid or not?
that's also very subjective because different people want to see different things on your portfolio as well. Um, but it has to demonstrate in a very short amount of time because people's attention span, it's like they'll probably stay on your page for 5 minutes, like 5 seconds, not even 5 minutes, sorry, like 5 seconds. And if they don't see what they want to see, then they might just leave. So you have to do it very well, and the content itself has to be very, like, you have to kind of know your stuff and be able to show it in a very condensed way. And honestly, that's very tough. So, if you're learning by yourself, I mean, I don't know if you currently have a full-time job, but you'd be spending a significant amount of time. It could take maybe up to a year, or depending on how disciplined you are. You mentioned you were pretty disciplined, maybe. I've had a friend who's done it in 2 months, but I can't remember if he was doing that full-time or if he was just doing this on the side while he had a full-time job. Um, and he was able to get a job and learn all of the required skills and just do it himself. But for him, he already had like a coding background, so he was basically like a unicorn because he knew how to code and he also understood UX design. So for him, it was probably a lot easier for him to transition from what he was doing into UX and just learn all that stuff by himself. For me, because the reason why I decided to take a boot camp was because I had come from a background that was so different from um, the current one, this current UX transition that I was trying to make, and I wanted to streamline what I want, like the learning process. I guess I wanted someone to tell me what I need to know, but I realized after going into that boot camp a lot of what I had learned was stuff I had already read on the internet. What it provided me was just a community of people who were also going through this transition, trying to get into UX, and also being able to work collaboratively with them on projects. Like that part, I think, was the most value that I got out of the boot camp. Um, so In terms of technical knowledge wise, I don't know how much value the bootcamp provided, but in terms of experience with doing design challenges and projects like that, I think it was very valuable. Um, Now, for the college program, for me, because I had already had a university degree and a master's, and I was already working full time for quite a bit of time, I myself didn't feel like I wanted to commit so much time. Like 18 months is a pretty significant chunk of time to be learning UX design. And I think I wasn't sure how much they could actually teach me from a technical standpoint because I felt like getting practical experience would be um, a lot better than just going to school and learning it. And that being said, I'm not sure what the curriculums are like at these colleges because I didn't look too much into it. Um, I actually know someone who's currently going through it. I haven't really asked him what his experience has been like so far. So I can't really speak to that, but I think at the time, also, I was trying to figure out if UX was also something I really liked because I wasn't completely sure. So, again, that's another point that backs up why I decided not to go with a college program, just because I was like, whoa, this is like a year and a half and $20,000. That's a significant amount of time to be and money to be spending on something I wasn't sure. In terms of how employers see it, I've gone to some um, conferences where they had speakers. Some of them really value people having gone through a boot camp and getting more education. Um, and then I've also heard other people that I've gotten coffees with saying, yeah, they sometimes they discount people with like certificates or have gone through boot camps. So honestly, it really depends on who you talk to because they all have different opinions. The company that I'm working for right now, which I'm very thankful for, is they're very open to people learning and people coming from all different kinds of backgrounds. I think most of the people that are at my company right now, they've all been like, for example, devs. Some of them are like nuclear engineer majors, or they were doing some sort of like cancer research and things like that, and now they're developers and doing all this code. So they really appreciate people coming with a different background, so that allows them to provide a different perspective in terms of the work. They really value people's work ethic over uh, what they've done on paper. Like they've gotten a master's in whatever at a prestigious university. They don't care as much about that versus what you could bring to the table and what your personality is like and if you have the drive to do things. So honestly, that's a really long-winded way of saying it depends, and that's going to be frustrating because when even in UX, you'll notice whenever you ask a question, a lot of the times people's answers will be it depends on the situation. Um, so it's really up to you and your budget and what you deem worthy of your time, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think as I'm thinking about it too, from your answer, it seems like when the people say it depends, it's like it doesn't seem like there's from my experience too, where there's a set kind of company type where it even like fits. It could exactly be like the same kind of company where it could be they're both company A and company B are both VC backed, they're both high growth, they're both 50-person companies, and they will have completely different views.
Yeah, you just have to find the right company that values what you could bring to the table. Um, so it's honestly very difficult to say.
I guess yeah, like it seems like for you in making the decision, it it kind of factored in um, the personal decision on like will it give me confidence? Will it give me a community? Will it give? I think the community part is actually very big from other guests that have come on who've also been on boot camps. I've had another guest on who went through a software boot camp, and that guest also, I think it was a semi-anonymous podcast. The guest also said how it was very valuable because you got the community sense. It wasn't so much the coding element, and the person actually believed that his boot camp didn't really add as much technical knowledge compared to maybe even other places, but the community was the biggest adding factor.
Also, something to add on to that. So, if you decide to take on a route where you're just learning by yourself, I think one of the drawbacks of that is that you can't really show that you can work on a team, because some other questions that I've gotten during interviews are like, have you worked with devs? Have you worked with, like, can you give me a scenario where you worked in a team, like in a team scenario, and what kind of issues did you have with that? So I think if you can talk about your experiences at the boot camp, or if you decide to do the college program and your struggles with, I don't know, whatever conflict, there's always some sort of conflict that you experience, then it makes you much stronger candidate versus like, oh yeah, I did this project by myself and yeah, everything was smooth sailing.
That's definitely a good point too. It kind of tailors you more, I guess, closer to the actual working environment. Yeah. And I think that's what I found to be very important, where you can try to, at least, you also brought up a good point where, like, when you compare the college program versus the boot camp, it's like asking yourself, well, if a boot camp is 3 months and a college program is 18 months, will that additional 15 months really be adding that much technical value? And it's also the hourly difference, right? Where, you know, like my accounting degree, each course is about 3 hours a week, and so if you're in a college program, you might be only doing like maybe 10 hours a week of some of this design technical knowledge stuff, whereas at a boot camp it could actually be 10 hours a day. So then it could actually be very similar in hourly time as well. It's just way more truncated, but I think the point I'm trying to get at is that it allows you to test things faster. At the same time, maybe these kind of programs might actually add value in terms of trying to replicate what you might actually go through at work. Because, like, this is completely anecdotal, just my experience. This is, I didn't believe my degree in accounting taught me anything related to my job.
Oh yeah, no. I think that's like the running joke, is that most of the stuff you learn in class doesn't translate into work.
Because when I first had my first audit job, I had that right after a term where I nearly bombed my audit course, but then I became an all-star auditor for like a Big Four company, so it made me wonder, I'm obviously really bad at audit as a class, but I'm apparently very good at doing audit as a professional. And then when I went back to school, I didn't really have to study audit because I just did what I did at work on the exams. And then it would just lead to arguing with professors and trying to tell them, you don't know what audit's actually like. Your rules don't apply. Nobody does what you think they should do. Which, just, I'm kind of bashing on modern day education as not really adding that much value, but who knows? Maybe design's different. But I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I think, like, in terms of the boot camp, they try to structure it so that it's, you don't have any exams or things like that. You don't have to, like, straight memorize things, or, like, you don't really get marked on your projects, which is great, I think.
I think it's great. I think there's actually a lot of data that actually supports the idea of not grading people. It actually makes, I think, your learning environment highly toxic when you grade.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I felt like there was more freedom to try different things, because I wasn't afraid of getting a quote unquote bad grade because I was trying to do something different. So I don't know. I think that's one of the benefits that you can get from that, instead of just learning theory. Yeah.
So it's a long-winded way of saying, I guess it depends.
That was like a 15-minute answer for that one question.
But I think you gave a good perspective on your experience to help
Yeah,
AC.
I hope it's helpful. I mean, I almost feel like, did I answer her question? I don't know.
Maybe if you have something that pops up, we can come
Yeah,
back to that.
yeah, yeah.
The next question: what one, two, three top skills should one prioritize to stand out as a junior UX designer, i.e., portfolio, interview skills, work experience, technical knowledge, credentials, soft skills, etc., etc. Um, she says that you mentioned that junior design positions are now very competitive and seniors are high in demand. So that's why she's curious on how she can separate herself from the pack.
Again, so if you want to get your foot in the door, the first thing employers see is your portfolio. Um, and so having a really strong portfolio, and there's like an asterisk to that because having strong portfolios is also kind of subjective depending on what the employer wants to see. If you're applying to more of a UI position, then maybe you want to show more visual design stuff and your abilities to show that. If you want to do more UX related stuff, you might want to show more of your research process. But that being said, having a strong portfolio is definitely really high up there, probably one of the top things.
How can you test for that? How would you go? How did you go about?
Honestly, it was actually kind of almost a frustrating process when I was building my portfolio because everyone that I asked to critique my portfolio would kind of give me pointers on how I should do things. Oh, you should write less, um, and just give me visuals. I don't want to see any of that crap about all your research and your thought process behind that. I just want to see visuals. And then another person would be like, oh, I want to see your thought process. Like, you should write more and explain more about this and blah, blah, blah. So it was a lot of getting feedback from people, but then also filtering out that feedback to make sure that I was still showcasing myself as a designer and not just tailoring it to what other people think I should be. And I think that's really important too. And as you do more design, that sense of what exactly you want to do, if it's more UX or UI, um, then you'll naturally showcase that more in your portfolio. Um, but yeah, it was honestly tough just trying to balance that part out. I think the feedback and what exactly I want to showcase. Um, so other than portfolio,
Oh, before we move on,
yeah.
I'm curious how did you figure out what you wanted to do versus in UI versus UX?
So to be honest, I think I find myself actually more interested in UI, but I know I'm not as strong in my design um, skills. So I tried to focus my stuff more on the UX side because I'm a lot stronger in terms of analytical and doing research and all that stuff. So I tried to, um, I guess, in terms of my case studies, write out a lot more of my thought processes. And actually, a hack that I tried to get around, so that like the couple people that told me they just wanted to see visuals, so when they clicked into a particular case study, I included a button where they could just like jump right to my high fidelity prototype so that they could people that just want to see my visuals can skip all that like text junk about what I'm my thought process and things like that, and then just go straight to my visuals. And then if they like what they see and they want to actually know what my thought process is, then they can just go back and like go on that same page and just review all my stuff. So that was kind of a way for me to get around that. I don't know if that was the best option, but at the time that's what I did. I haven't really touched my portfolio to be honest after I got my job. And I know I should be maintaining it, but I just haven't really had the time to do that. Um, But yeah, so other than, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Other than portfolio, um, another thing you should practice is design challenges. And that's like part of your interview skills because almost unlike accounting interviews where it's a lot of like behavioral stuff, um, for design interviews, they give you challenges just so they can actually see the type of work you're capable of doing. So, learning to do these design challenges and making sure you're hitting the right objectives that they're looking for, and then being able to clearly communicate that in a short period of time, and very clearly is a really important skill to have in terms of your interview because like probably 99% of the interviews that you're going to do for UX will have some sort of design challenge. So I think that is really key. And there's one guy, I think I don't know, I'm going to butcher his name, but he wrote a book that basically just has design challenges and you can use that as practice. I think his name is like Artem Dashinsky or Dashsky. I don't know, Dashsky. um, I don't remember what his last name was, but he has a book where he just writes design challenges and you can just practice.
What's the book called?
Pretty sure I have it saved. Oh, Solving Product Design Exercises. Artyom Dashinsky. ArtyomDashinsky. So if you want to check that out, practice some design challenges. This was a helpful book that will definitely help out with that process. Yeah.
All right. So then I guess then the top skills, if we dissect or summarize it, is one, strong portfolio, either UX or UI focused or tailored, and then design challenges.
Design challenges, and with that is like also soft skills and like being able to communicate and
it's kind of one of the methods of honing the skills that we
yeah, it really like those are probably the top things. And then yes, technical knowledge is important to have, but I have found that there's always things you're going to be learning in UX. There's always things that are always changing. So yeah, I feel like UX design applies a lot of common sense as well. So I think as long as you have common sense and understand common human behavior, you'll be like okay in that sense. And they know that you're also a junior UX designer, so even if you're not like super great at your technical knowledge, I don't think they will fault that too much. At least not with the companies that I've interviewed for. They don't really seem like they're like, oh, you don't know what this term means. Like, I don't think
they're not very snobby
about
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, next question. Why are senior design positions more available than junior ones? Follow up. Do a lot of UX designers leave the field before making senior?
Okay, I'll answer the first question first. So why are there more senior positions? I think a couple of years ago there were actually a lot more junior positions. But now companies are getting a lot more picky because they don't want to have to go through the process of training people, and they're working on products, and so they don't want to have to spend that time having to make sure, oh yeah, we're training this person, make sure they're learning and doing all these things. They probably want to focus more of their time on actually making a great product. And if you have someone junior on the team, I think it's a lot harder than to iterate really quickly with someone who's already senior and already knows what they're doing. That being said, some companies value having junior designers because they can mold them and things like that. But I think because companies are so focused on growing, like high growth, quick growth, whatever, they're more focused on getting that senior designer that can basically do everything and know what they're doing. I think that would probably be the answer to that.
Yeah, I think my experience just talking to a lot of different startups around the Canadian startup ecosystem is also it kind of conforms to that. I think it's also, I would say from what I've seen, it's also kind of the stages. So younger startups or younger companies like pre-Series A funding kind of companies, they're definitely going to be looking for senior designers. Like when I talk to folks who are either on the leadership team or co-founders, they just straight up tell me like, yeah, we don't want to hire kids who don't know what they're doing. We want, like, we're going to hire someone and who knows, who can do like everything.
Yeah.
Underpay them because we can't afford them really, and then just give them a ton of equity and just hope things are going to work out, because they're playing in 6 month, 1 year max time frames to build things. And so for them, it's just like the biggest thing where every time I talk to any kind of leadership team member, they always talk about speed. Like it's just speed before anything really. Like even if they say, oh, we care about quality, it kind of makes it seem like it boils down just to speed.
Yeah, I think especially for startups, I mean,
like actual startups,
they're like, they need to perform. They need to show their investors that they're making progress. And as much as they would want to invest in junior designers, they, like, the fact of the matter is that they just don't have the budget to invest funds into that.
So I think like
it's not a large company.
It would need to be like a bigger tech company for them to hire juniors.
Yeah, I think you would have better luck at going to a bigger tech company because they have more budget. But yeah, I don't know. I've heard some good things about the larger companies where they try to. But even then, I think it's because those positions are not that widely available. They're so few. It's like pretty competitive to actually get into those companies. Sorry, so the second question.
The second question was, do a lot of UX designers leave the field before making senior?
Leave the field? So, like, transition into a different
or maybe
position?
Maybe the questioner is implying leaving the job?
Like leaving that particular company that they're with?
Yeah.
So it seems like a lot of UX designers like to jump around a lot. So they'll spend like 2 years here and then switch to another company, 2 years there. So I have seen that in certain LinkedIn profiles that I've stalked. But there are also other UX designers who stay for quite a long time. And I think it also depends on the company that you're with. Obviously, if the startup that you are working for blows up, you'll have to jump before you make senior designer. Or if you see a better opportunity where you can learn more and grow more, then it's probably a good idea to jump as well. So I have seen quite a mix of people. I don't think there's like, oh yeah, I have to leave here before I make senior designer. I haven't really seen that sentiment or like people.
Yeah, I'd imagine people probably want to stay until they make a title, knowing, the desire for people to have
senior designers,
these titles on their resumes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, sometimes it's also frustrating because I feel like these titles that they give to people are just so arbitrary.
Oh, 100%. Especially in a startup.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It's like frustrating.
I'd meet a director of something and I'd ask him, so what do you really do? And it's just some, like...
They don't really know.
No, like they're like the director of finance, but the kid's never taken an accounting course before, so he has no idea what he's really doing.
Yeah, or they're like head of growth, and it's like 1%.
Right, but the growth team is all of that 1%.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Then the next question is, if you could go back and choose whether to do the boot camp, would you still do it? What would you do differently to make the transition smoother, knowing what you know now? So I guess we'll answer the first part of this question, which is...
Yeah, would I still do it?
Yeah, would you still do it?
It's funny because before our program finished, a bunch of us in my cohort, like my classmates, were basically asking each other this question. And surprisingly, a lot of them said, so after we signed up, the price of our program went from 10K to 12K, or like 12,500 or something like that. Anyway, and a lot of them were saying, I don't know if I'd pay for that additional $2,000. And I think it's tough. Because I really did, again, that whole point, value like community and the people that I met there and the collaborative environment that was there and just the support that you kind of get when you're in that environment. But I feel like the price is just a little bit too high for what I'm getting out of that program. That being said, things worked out and I worked really hard for it, but things worked out for me pretty nicely. I got a job, I think like 2 months out of the boot camp, and I know some of my friends that are in the boot camp are still looking for jobs right now, and it's been like maybe half a year.
What percentage would you say?
I actually don't know. I haven't even really kept in touch with a lot of them. But no one's really mentioned anything in our Slack group. So I'm assuming that a lot of them are still looking for jobs. Like some UX related jobs. I mean, some people are working at coffee shops and like doing freelance things here and there. But no one's really had a full-time UX job, I think. I forgot the question.
Would you go back?
Would I go back? I think yes. Given what I know now and the mindset that I was in and the environment that I really needed for this transition, I think I would go back as long as the price stayed at 10,000. I don't know if I could justify that 12K tuition because it was a significant amount of money. Luckily, I picked up like some work right before, and I was able to make a good amount of money right before I actually did the boot camp. So it helped me with my finances and stuff, but I don't know, it's tough to justify that 12K for the community and the collaborative support.
Yeah, you're just buying friends
Yeah.
to help for $12,000.
Yeah, buying friends to go through the process with me. Yeah, I think I would still go back, but it's hard to choke down that tuition.
So then the continuing question is, what would you do differently to make the transition smoother, knowing what you know now?
Like my entire transition from quitting my job in accounting to getting a job in UX, or transition from finishing my boot camp to getting a job.
How about we go with the wider one, so
Yeah,
it just kind of fits in
accounting.
everywhere. Yeah.
I don't remember if I mentioned this in the previous podcast, but in the time when I quit my job to deciding to apply to go to a boot camp, I was just applying to jobs here and there and just trying to like do something for the sake of doing something, even though I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. I think if I had taken that time to just relax and really try to figure out what I wanted to do instead of wasting all that time like applying to jobs, doing interviews for like CS, like customer success related roles, I would have maybe had more time to build some skills or network with more people that were in UX. Um, that probably would have helped with my transition because I just feel like there was a period of time um, where it was just things were very unclear, and I think if I had directed my efforts more, uh, that would have streamlined the process a little bit. Um, and then from the
Sorry, before you move on,
yeah,
I'm curious. Do you feel that the time you spend interviewing for these random jobs, like the customer success jobs you mentioned, do you find that those experiences helped with your conviction of going into UX, or do you think it wouldn't have mattered? Do you feel that the entire experience is more of a just a time waster?
that's a good question.
I say that just because my experience with exploring and constantly grabbing. So when I made my transitions, I tried to explore wider, not as like I guess wide as talking to software engineers, just think about should I be a software engineer? But even when I'm looking at hedge funds, I talk to guys in private equity, guys in venture capital, or right now I've practically interviewed and spoken to hundreds of people in product, data, operations, etc. And each time I find I get little bits of information that helps narrow down certain choices.
Yeah, no, the reason I pause is you had a good point, and in that I think that process is definitely necessary. That discovery process is just definitely necessary. But what I meant was the amount of time I spent writing cover letters and creating, like, editing my resume. I could have spent that time actually networking with people, whether it's in UX or people who are actually doing CS, or I was also looking into growth marketing. If I had spent that time applying to jobs, and actually networked with people instead to get their experience and learn more about whatever it was that I wanted to get into, I think time would have been more well spent. Does that make sense?
Right. You wanted to collect the answers from people's
Right.
experiences instead of
Just mindlessly applying to jobs and just
and hoping to get the information at the interview.
yeah, exactly. And I think that was probably the wrong way to go about it, was realizing in the interview, like fourth round of a CS interview, that I was like, I don't really want to do this. I'm just kind of applying to jobs because I feel like I need to do something. Yeah.
How long was the gap between you leaving your job to going to boot camp? How long of a time did you give yourself?
So I quit at the beginning of November. I went on vacation for like 3 weeks, came back mid-December, and then it was like Christmas, yay, and like New Year's parties. So November, December, January, February. So 4 months was kind of the amount of time I between when I quit my job to when I stopped applying to jobs. March-ish, or I would say maybe like the last couple weeks of February was kind of when I was seriously deciding whether or not to join a boot camp. And then by March, I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna commit to it, and just instead of thinking so much about it, I'm just gonna go through with it. So about, I don't know, my bootcamp started in April, so I had that 2 additional months after I finally decided that I would do bootcamp. Yeah, so well, like 5 months ish. Yeah.
And so then afterwards, after the boot camp, what would you have done differently to make it smoother?
I don't know. I don't think I actually would have done much. Does that sound like really weird that I'm like, yeah, I think I did everything right? Um, I feel like knowing what I know now and seeing this situation with other people that went to class with me, I feel really lucky to have been able to get a job as quickly as I did. Um, yeah, I feel like coming out of it, the expectation was 3 to 6 months in terms of looking to like landing a job, and I found it in like 2 months. So I don't know. I felt pretty good about the process. So I don't think there was much that I would change. If there's anything that I would, I guess, make the process even better, continue to get more coffees, continue to connect with people, go to more events, talk to more people, um, make more connections. But like I don't know, I felt like the process was pretty smooth afterwards. Uh, and that's just me looking back at it right now because of that whole psychological effect. When you look back in time, you're like, yeah, it actually wasn't that bad. I forgot what the term for that process was. I remember I learned it in my psychology class.
Hindsight bias.
Yeah, something like that. Um, but I know during that time when I was actually building my portfolio, I was like, I don't even know when this is done. Like it's honestly, it's never really done. So it was tough, but yeah, I don't think there was anything really significant that I would change about the process that I went through.
Yeah, I think if I were to think about if I think back on anything I would change in me building this whole podcast and the media platform I've done, I've made a ton of mistakes, and I've had a ton of time where I've been very upset at myself for feeling like I wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
But I could also argue that if I didn't go through that, then I might not have as
Yeah.
much conviction about
Yeah.
certain things I'm doing now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes you just need time to just go through what you need to go through in order to have that full conviction that you're doing this right or that like it's okay. You just need to go through the journey.
Yeah, that's what I want to kind of ask you about, where it's just it's a comedian I like, Bill Burr. He says that life is just eating a giant shit sandwich, and everyone's just eating a shit sandwich.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty nice.
Yeah, you're just that's just what life is. But kind of coining on that term, it's kind of like you're just eating shit, really, as you go through this process. And I think it's just not gonna be smooth. I don't think there's ever gonna be a time where you think, oh God, it's smooth. I feel like during the moment, it's never gonna feel smooth, even if it looks like it's gonna be smooth, or even if it looks smooth 10 years later, and you go, oh, that was very smooth. I feel when you're actually going through it,
you're like
this is the worst thing ever. Yeah. At least for me, that's what it's been like that. Every time I've made a transition and I look back, I think that's what that's where the misconception is, where people think, oh, that looks like a very smooth transition, and then you have to tell them, no, it was awful.
Yeah, I think it's honestly it's tough because you just have to go through the bumps and things like that in order to get through that process. And people will always try and give you advice for what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. But it gets really confusing because you need to filter through all of that and figure out what you want to do. Again, and that goes back to how also your portfolio as well, like what do you want to do with it and what do you want to showcase to other people. It's tough.
Yeah, I think the best thing about advice is you just learn to ignore them.
Yeah.
I think that's what advice is. The more advice you hear and you listen to, over time you get to a point where you realize all the advice cancel out to zero, where none of it actually mattered,
right.
And then you end up
so conflicting,
learning to listen to yourself more.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, so nobody knows
Yeah.
what really is, and everyone thinks they know because they quote unquote made it on their own different way, but a lot of it might not have actually been because they made XYZ decisions.
Yeah, and it's tough because the advice that they give is a lot of times from their own experience, and everyone has a different journey or a path that they're taking. So the advice that they're giving to you might not necessarily even really apply to you and what you're doing.
And they're not going to be there for you when you fall down. And then they're not going to give you an advice there.
They're like, oh yeah, oh by the way, I just told you that because this is what I experienced, but I mean that was probably the wrong decision for you. In hindsight, that's probably what they would say to you. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. All right, that's the end of the question.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah. All right. I think this is for you listeners out there. As I said, if you ask questions, they will be answered, and ask and you shall receive. That's what happened with AC today. She was very nice. She reached out and she had all these very detailed and wonderful questions that were very specific, that I think were easy to ask as well and easy to answer, I hope. And yeah, well, Min, thanks for coming on the podcast once again and answering these questions. My listeners and I appreciate it. I also had a lot of fun, and yeah, hopefully this is a segment I get to do more with some of my other guests, where when listeners have questions, they can write back in.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a lot of fun. Thanks for having me back again. AC, hopefully I was able to answer some of the questions that you had and that I was helpful in the process. I know it's really tough, and there's a lot of different paths that you can take. And I had gone through that as well. In the end, I think it really boils down to what stage you're in your life and what you think would give you the most value in terms of deciding how to go about transitioning into this career. But I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you're going to kick ass.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and take care. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope the story was inspiring to you. Hopefully it also helped you expand your perspectives. Hopefully it also made you question the default path that you might have been going on, or the default beliefs you might have had. And maybe now it'll make you even think about doing something about it, doing something different, maybe challenging yourself, being courageous. Who knows? But regardless, I'm really happy that you took some time out of your day to listen to this fantastic story with my guest. And if you would like to somehow, in some way, contribute and help support the podcast, and maybe even just be part of the community that I'm trying to build with the greater OMD Ventures platform, really think about being a stakeholder in the platform. And the quick way to do that is to go to my website, oldmandan.com, and go to the stakeholders page. I believe it's oldmandan.com/stakeholder. And the link is also down below. And that's how you can figure out how you can subscribe, follow to get more updates on the free content, but at the same time also donate by actually just buying me a coffee. That's just how I put it. And you can buy me a coffee a month, coffee a week, or coffee every day of the year. And think about it as the way that, if you wanted to chat with me, you might just bring me out for coffee and buy me a coffee. Or if you wanted to bring one of my guests out to chat, you might buy them a coffee. So just think of it as I'm the service that's doing that for you, so you can just pay me in coffees. Don't worry, everything will still be free. It would just really help if you would like to show your support this way, so that I can use the coffee money to buy myself actual coffees, and also to buy my guests actual coffees, and use the leftover money to actually grow the platform, as well as even keep it operationally alive as well, because all this isn't really free, and it does take a lot of time to build it as well as operate it and hopefully grow it further. So your support would be amazing if you would like to contribute. And so yeah, just check out the website, go to the stakeholders page, and read the different kind of benefits you might even get as a stakeholder. All right, thank you.